All right. How's everyone doing today? Welcome to the Null News. Welcome to the Null News. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, we do these live on Twitch and YouTube. If you're watching on the Null Bytes, we do these live each week here on Twitch and YouTube. You can check out the links in the description. We have a lot to discuss today. Now, I'm going to try to do all of the news today. But I'd like to talk about each of these things a little bit as we go. And because of that, if we need more time and we're not feeling it, we will either do a session tomorrow morning. I'm thinking that's what it is. We'll just save some of it for tomorrow. There was actually a lot. Although I just don't know the pacing that we'll take through this news segment and see how quickly we get through everything that we have to talk about. Now, we did an emergency news section throughout the week because we had a closure of a company that has done some really, really great things that I wanted to bring attention to. It's a company called Weaveworks, which has done, I called attention to it in that, and I'll be releasing the Null Byte for that if you want to go watch that. The live stream is also saved on YouTube, but Weaveworks shuts down or shut down, and they did two really, really amazing things. One was EKS CTL. If you guys have ever tried to use EKS, from the command line, from the AWS command line, it's absolutely horrible. And they created that, and it is amazing. So much so that AWS adopted it as the official tool. That's how good it was. And then there's Flux. For any of you that are GitOps fans that like GitOps, there was Flux. And so, yeah, anyways, you can check that out. I'm not going to recap all of that because we did do the emergency stream for that. So that's the recap that you're getting. So let's jump into security. Now, the first bit of security I want to talk about is a really awesome thing that's happened. It's kind of security. It's kind of also tangentially open source and Rust. Let's talk about it. Google security blog. Improving man, I said this word myself just a minute ago. Interoperability between Rust and C++. We're just going to stick with that one. Not great, but we'll stick with it. All right. So Google announced that it was joining the Rust Foundation back in 2021 and, see what we're doing. They brought Android support and a few other things. Well, now they're bringing $1 million to the Rust Foundation to support the efforts to improve the ability of Rust code to interoperate with existing legacy C++. Basically, they want to make it where you can use, they want to bring better support to leveraging C++ in Rust code bases and Rust in C++ code bases. I'm actually assuming that their goal is more towards Rust in C++ libraries, because that would allow them to switch out little pieces of a really big C++ project. That would be my assumption. Now, I think something that a lot of people talk about, the $1 million. And, $1 million isn't that much. I'm sure it's a huge windfall to the Rust Foundation, and I'm happy for them. But in the grand scheme of things, it's not that big. But I think it has a couple things. First, it's throwing Google's support behind a project that also AWS and Microsoft are already throwing support behind. But, a thing that didn't get as much is we're furthering our existing commitment to the open source Rust community by aggregating and publishing audits for Rust sites that we use in open source Google projects. So I think this is actually huge. I think that this is huge and it hasn't been talked about, because they're actually going to be publishing audits for Rust crates. And I think that this is a huge thing for the Rust community. It means some of those open source projects are going to have Google audits, Google security audits run on them, and you're going to be able to see that. This should make those projects better as the Google security, because you can see them, as well as it will give you more confidence in different projects. So I actually think that this is a huge I think this is pretty big for the Rust community. And yeah, Google probably spends more than 1 million on teabags, probably. I get it. That's why I said the amount of money isn't as big of a deal. And I'm not, but that is not to say don't appreciate Google doing that, and I'm not like shaming them for only doing 1 million. That's not my point. That's not my point. So anyways, I'm really excited about this for Rust. I think that this is really big news. I hope to see Microsoft and AWS follow along in the same pattern. I think that that would just make the Rust community even better. So yeah, I'm excited for it. I think both of these things are big news for them. So let's move on to security. We had some interesting things happen. We had some interesting things that we need to talk about. First, researchers discover exposed API secrets impacting major tech tokens. Now, this doesn't sound that bad, but it's pretty bad. Escape security research team scanned 1.89 or 189 million URLs and found more than 18,000 exposed API secrets. This is rough, guys. This is rough. 41% of the exposed secrets were highly critical and could lead to financial risk for the organizations. We're talking about secrets for Stripe, GitHub, your code, your money processing, your how you charge your customers, how you store your code, how you access your infrastructure. I'm just like categorizing what each one of these secrets that you're leaking is. This one, just how much OpenAI charges you, I guess. How much OpenAI charges you. Your infrastructure. Twitch secret keys. I guess somebody could stream. I don't know that this is that big of a deal. Somebody could stream on your account, which is a big deal, but like, okay. Yeah. The keys to your bank if you're using cryptocurrency to bank. X tokens, okay. Slack and Discord webhooks, okay. These aren't as big as these. This is terrifying. That indicates a 67% increase in secret sprawl. Do we need to make a YouTube series on how to scan your stuff for secrets, how to manage secrets? Is that something people are having? Like, I'm actually asking you because I struggle to understand how we have this many. Is it just a lack of caring altogether? GitHub makes it very easy to scan for these things. They work really hard to keep you from doing this. So yeah, I'm wondering, what is the problem here? And what can we do to help? What can we do to help? Because this is pretty bad. AI. So Russell, we're going to talk about AI. We're going to talk about AI later. And this is one of those topics I want to spend the right amount of time. I don't want to rush off. There's actually new research on AI about some stuff. And there's a topic I want to talk about altogether that's kind of all my own. And I'm thinking about making a YouTube video on it. I'm going to give you guys the streamed version, and I'd like your feedback on whether you think that would make a good YouTube video that would be helpful to people. If not, I'll just cut the live stream and have that as a video out there for people. And But yeah, AI is probably part of this. And, if there's some videos I could make to help people, if you guys know of a struggle, let me know. I'd like to, I am actively asking, because this was worse than I thought it was going to be. Like, I get where you're like, oh, my Slack webhook is not good, but I get it. Little that they can do with it. But your Stripe, your GitHub, your RSA private keys, your AWS, these are all terrifying. Terrifying. Those are ones you keep. Anyways. Let's move on. Particularly interesting one that we're going to talk a little bit about here is this one. Now, it's a base score of 7.3, so it's pretty high. Not critical, but high. And the reason it's the libuv library. And one of the reasons I'm bringing it up is I saw something Dan Lornick posted, and I thought you guys should be aware of. PSA for this in libuv got released this week, which includes button. So the issue that Dan is bringing up is a lot of people actually build libuv, which means that it won't actually get scanned by secret scanners. So basically, it's on you guys to go and check and validate that it doesn't exist in your code base. So I thought that this was really good. I'm actually going to post this from Dan for you all. Louis uses it too. Okay. But yeah, most Node.js build bundles bundle libuv directly, so CV scanners will likely miss it. And the fix is in version 1.48. So this is one that you're probably going to want to validate that you've bumped the version up, because you can't rely on your secret scanners. So I guess we don't need to talk that much about. It's pertinent. Those null bytes. You should go check them out on YouTube. They're actually like a week and a half late at this point. We're working on that. Moving on. Last week I was a little in the dark with Ivanti, and I apologize. I caught up. They had a bunch of security vulnerabilities. You can go and look through them, where they had a new security vulnerability every day for like 3 days in a row. This led up to basically the first ban or their banishment from the United States government networks by the CISA. No, that's the wrong acronym. Anyways, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure. I think that's what it is. Anyways, so I followed up with it. There were several 0 days, and Anyways, if you're using Ivanti, hopefully you've patched. Because there's been widespread exploitation. Now, as far as I understand, everything is patched. Everything that we know of is patched. But it looks like they've had a long history of having this happen. Hopefully we'll see them adopt something like Rust in the future, because that will probably solve their problems. I'm just half joking there. Following up on the bans of Ivanti from the federal government of the United States, the US announced a visa ban on those linked to commercial spyware. Every day, the new 0 day with Ivanti. That's right. They're keeping you on your toes. It's a ton of fun. So if you're looking to get a visa to the United States, you might struggle if you're tied with commercial spyware. If your name has gotten tied to commercial spyware. Personally, I didn't realize this wasn't a thing when you're getting a visa application. I would have assumed that it was part of your, brief background check. But if you're linked to commercial spyware, you might be banned from entering the United States. All right. Linux. There's a critical flaw in the shim bootloader that impacts major Linux distributions. So as far as I can tell, Mark Zuckerberg, like he's already a citizen. All right. So as far as I can tell with this affects most any Linux distribution that runs with grub on UEFI. So UEFI is the thing that tries to protect your bootloader. So basically that time between the BIOS or the UEFI starting up and initializing everything and loading your OS. This is where you would get things that basically took over your computer before it loaded the OS, viruses before the OS. And basically there's a critical flaw in this. So there was this shim created to allow things to leverage it. It was originally developed by Microsoft for Microsoft Windows to ensure that there weren't these bootloaders on Windows things. They created this other thing to allow other, specifically Linux, to basically leverage the same security and safety. And this flaw is in the shim as far as I understand. So it's pretty cool that Microsoft itself was the person that found the vulnerability, which makes sense. And I do believe there is a patch already. Okay, yeah. There many of the have already fixed the flaw. So keep your OS updated, and you should be fine. I know a lot of us use Linux, so I think a lot of us use Linux. Let me know if you don't use Linux. All right, JetBrains warns of a new TeamCity auth bypass vulnerability. So if you guys haven't used TeamCity, I don't know if it's still popular. I know like 10 years ago, TeamCity used to be really big. I don't know if people are still really leveraging it, but there is a critical auth bypass, security bypass. So if you're using TeamCity, you need to update immediately. As basically it will rice you, and you don't even need to be local to it. So this is like as high as they get. It's pretty bad. So I'm gonna put this in chat for all of you. Russell, you're not on Linux right now. Oh, that hurts. So there's the bug. So if you're using TeamCity, there are more than 2,000 TeamCity servers exposed online. That means 2,000 had this because, again, they can literally take over your TeamCity and execute code in your TeamCity cluster remotely. Okay? Free builds and crypto mining until you go. So anyways, go patch immediately is the key there. I'm trying to tailor these security things, not to just anything, but things that will affect developers. So I'm trying to, let me know how I'm doing with that. I'm trying to keep them interesting. This one is more of just a new data breach. I know that we've been talking about breaches. So there's been a new data breach. If you use the learning app, the lecture notes learning app. So if you've used the lecture notes learning app, you might have been compromised. So be careful. Don't patch. We want free builds. Another one is a large hospital chain in France. So another large breach impacted 33 million French people, French denizens, probably, or people that are visiting France. So if you've been visiting France, went to the hospital, or in France, you might want to check your data. Okay. I'm just going to, those are like PSAs. I didn't dig into these breaches, exactly how they happened. Yeah, so. 33 million people? Is that no, France has way more people than that. That can't be half of France. It's half of France. Okay. It is half of France. Interestingly, it was a provider that served multiple. So if you're looking at this, it was a company that served basically insured individuals, and 84 healthcare organizations that used its services. So it was some middleware group in company that was actually hacked, not the organizations themselves. All right, let's talk about the clouds. Did anybody else have anything in security? I know I went through some stuff really quickly. That was about it for cloud or for the security. Important things. I don't know that we needed to dwell on them. Yeah. All right. So let's talk about cloud news. We have, I guess, all the exciting stuff is in the AI news, the open source news. We have some Kubernetes stuff to do. All right, so let's talk about cloud news. There's really not a whole lot. I didn't actually get a whole lot of time myself, as I was pretty busy. But there is the public preview of the Azure NetX Files standard network features in the U.S. government regions. So I know that's something we had talked about previously, but I guess it wasn't in the Gov Cloud. So there's that, and support for up to 100 terabytes of storage in the Fear service. So if that's something you're using. Everything else, there was nothing really, there was just some expansions to different things and to different availability zones. There was the general availability of topology. Again, not a whole lot of noteworthy things here. GCP, on the other hand, had actually one thing that I thought was well worth talking about, which is this right here. So previously in Cloud Run, you couldn't actually leverage cloud storage buckets like you could with AWS Lambdas. I don't know about Azure's, but I imagine this was actually something that when I read this, I was like, but wait, really? You can't? Is now in preview. You can mount a cloud storage bucket to a Cloud Run volume. So it's finally possibly a thing, which again surprised me that it's not before now. So I think this is huge news because like this actually makes Cloud Run more viable. It's more viable. As a follow-up, AlloyDB is getting better almost every single day. They must be on continuous deployment. So it's Postgres as a service, and it now supports Postgres 15. And you can now trigger integration workflows via webhooks. So those were the new and shiny things. I really think this is probably the biggest thing out of here. This is nice to have. Obviously, it's getting better every single day. I'm glad they released a new version. If you're using AlloyDB, awesome. AWS. Biggest news is just they're renaming something. So Amazon Kinesis Data Firehose is now just going to be Amazon Data Firehose. So instead of AKDF, it's going to be ADF, which is easier to abbreviate. So Amazon Data Firehose or Amazon Kinesis is now Amazon Data Firehose. I actually personally don't love this because we always just said Amazon Kinesis or Kinesis. You never said the data fire hose. I didn't even realize it was named Amazon Kinesis Data Fire Hose because everybody just referred to it as Kinesis. So to me, I don't actually love this name change, but it's an important name change because it is changing names. So there you go. The other things that I saw here was like Amazon Q updates that actually allows you to run code in Glue. So if you want Amazon Q, something notoriously bad at interpreting what you say, to actually run and cost you money, you can now do that. Amazon Q will author jobs and run them in Glue for you. It's going to be an amazing bank run for Amazon. So yeah, that's about it for the cloud. Did anybody else see something else interesting in the clouds? I didn't get the chance to check the smaller clouds like DigitalOcean or Linode or any of those. I do know that I need to do a little bit on those, some catch-up work on some of the things that they're doing. On one of the news days that we have less to cover, I will try to catch us up on all of those. All right. We're moving on to AI. If nobody else has any news articles at this point, we're going to move on to AI. So we have a few news articles to talk about. And then we have a couple research articles. We're going to cover exactly one research article. And then we're going to talk about something I don't think people are talking about that needs to be talked about. And you guys are going to tell me if it's worth making a video about. The first, and maybe the funniest aspect of all of this, is Sam Altman seeks as much as $7 trillion for new AI chip project. Let that sink in. That means the company would have to be worth at least There are not many $7 trillion companies. I'm actually very intrigued I am very intrigued by this. No startup raises $5 trillion. Even OpenAI doesn't do this. Now, I know he has talked about AI hardware and things like that, but I mean, shoot, if he can raise $5 trillion, that will be amazing. That'll be amazing. Russell, I appreciate the emotes. Yeah, there aren't any $5 to $7 trillion companies. That's right. There's $2 and $3 trillion companies. I was going to say, I think Apple and Microsoft are up there in the trillions. Don't quote me. I know they broke $1 trillion. Where they are exactly, like nobody even has the money to hand this over. The federal government doesn't have the money to hand this over. So that's interesting. Both recently broke 3 trillion. Okay, perfect. I find this interesting because I don't think that Sam Altman would say something like this if he wasn't expecting to at least. Obviously, he doesn't expect to raise $5 trillion. I get that. He doesn't. But what will he raise? Will he be able to raise, valued at over $1 trillion with no product? That would be amazing. I don't think it will happen, but that would be amazing. Let's move on to something that was released by Apple. We actually have two things from Apple. I need to go back on one thing that Apple released last week. that we're going to talk more about because I didn't fully understand it at the time. But I'm actually more excited about it now. Yeah, I didn't expect that. This is an interesting machine learning thing. It actually understands human, so you can use text to talk to it. And the real interesting thing that it does is it allows you to edit images via the text that you type it. So you can ask it to do things specific to your image. One thing that really frustrates me with AI generated things is like you can make it change the image that you have, but you really can't edit it. And a lot of times it will come up with something completely new and different and terrible. Where you just wanted a small, like, oh, I'd like to change the color of their hair. And when you ask it to change the color of the hair, it changes more than just the color of the hair. And so this is really interesting if they can make a model that actually does editing, because you all know that I need help editing thumbnails, and my daughter doesn't have nearly enough time to make them all for me. Yes, PKL or pickle. I'm actually more intrigued with it than I was previously. And I want to do it justice because I want to actually ponder it as an interesting thing. Because I think it could be nothing. It could be nothing, but it's more interesting than I thought it was going to be at first glance, especially because now I understand it better, because originally I didn't understand it at all. I thought it was just another YAML, but it's not another YAML. And that's the interesting part. It's not another YAML. So we'll talk about it in a little bit though. We have a lot of stuff to go over here. So anyways, this is interesting. I'm excited to see it. It's open source, so you can go check it out. It's MGIE. So anyways. Russell, it can transpile to YAML. We'll talk about it because this is where, again, the README was terrible, and I'll stand by that. The README was absolutely terrible. I didn't understand a thing about it, and I actually had to like dig into it to figure out some of this, because I'm not saying it's the best thing. I'm saying it's an interesting take on the problem. Russell, you're already feeling sick. Okay. All right. The next chapter of Gemini era. So Google has officially released their Gemini. So if you're in the United States, I think it's just the US at this point, you can actually sign up to pay money to use their AI on their Google One AI premium plan. It's only $20 a month. There you go. Which is right in line with OpenAPI. So it's roughly in par, and it will give you stuff with Gmail, Google Docs, and other stuff. So now, that being said, one of the things people noticed in this was that they are going to have basically their AI is going to be trained on your email if you have a free email. So have fun with that. Have fun with that. I write crappy emails, so kind of the joke's on them if they use my emails as a template. I get ads and I write crappy emails. Yeah, I think honestly this is due to Bard. Bard was a failure, not at a technical level. There are technical failures, and then is Bard. Bard was just as good as other things, and would lie to you just as much as ChatGPT would. The thing that happened was in their demo, in their marketing stuff, they published it lying. And that was the big kicker. Nobody said that ChatGPT didn't lie just as much. ChatGPT got lawyers in trouble. ChatGPT has had just as many cases, if not more, just from use. The fact was, their marketing just, I think that honestly, it probably just killed the name. Everybody knew Bard for the thing that lied about stuff. All right, so there's a thing that I've wanted to talk about. Two things. About AIs. We're going to talk about them. One is a paper that was released by GetClear. GetClear is a company that does research and publishes the results, and they're really annoying because they make you give you the email to get the white paper that they wrote up, which is annoying. But they did make one that was worth me giving my email to them. You're right, I'm getting spam for you guys. All right. What were we talking about? We are talking about this right here. Coding on Copilot 2023 data suggests downward pressure on code quality. This is code turn per year, and I would expect year over year increase because there's in general more and more software made each year. And so if you're talking about year to year, I would expect a increase. But if you go throughout, you can see that for a while it's been holding pretty the same steady rate. And in 2023 and 2024, it drastically increased, the amount of churn. Now, there's two things that this article goes into, two reasons there's more code turn. The first is that the AIs aren't actually writing reusable code. They're writing longer functions that aren't really reusable, and the users don't know them as well. So they're not fundamentally as in tune with the code that they've written, and so they don't know that they can leverage another piece of the code base as easily because of that. The other reason is the large functions, as well as just code quality as a whole. When you're using another thing that they come to is that when you're using the AIs, if it works, why would you refactor it? But a lot of the times, the code that the AI has spit out needs a refactor to actually be leveraged usefully, which then can cause you to go back and refactor it, which adds to the code churn. I say turn so many times when I mean churn. So there is at this early point, strong evidence to say that AI has negatively impacted your code quality, negatively impacted it. And this is something you have to take into consideration because when you're talking about the cost, when you say, oh, well, I can do more with fewer developers. So a lot of the times you look at how much you can code. And let's say you can do this much code with just devs, no AI. No AI. And you can do this much with the same number of devs with AI. The question becomes, if this much of this code has to be reworked, did you actually do more? Did you actually release more if you're spending more time rewriting code that the AI generated? Was it actually a benefit to you? I think this is something that people need to think about a lot. I do think that you can be more productive with AI. I don't think it's much more. I think it's like this. I think that this is actually achievable, but it's only with senior engineers that can actually take it as a recommendation to help them go quicker because we type slowly. I type slowly. I know that some senior engineers type quickly, and that's amazing. I wish I could. but it can't just be relied on. And I was asked the other day if I thought that AI was a great place for new people to begin. And I actually said at that point, I'm undecided, but I think no. I think no. Because it's too tempting to do bad coding practices, but you don't even know. If you're trying to learn to write an if statement, I suppose that's fine. Use the AI for that. If you're trying to learn actually to write a big piece of complicated software, I don't think it's going to help you. All right, that's number one. Go check this out if you want to. It's worth a read. I also think that this is pretty hard for the AI community. Basically, if you read through that research, and again, it's one piece of research. We'll get more as we go. So this isn't the end of the world for AIs or anything like that. I'm not being, but the thing is, you actually have to prove that you're worth something. I mean, you don't have to, obviously. None of this has proven to be worth anything at this point. But you have to prove that you're going to have fewer security vulnerabilities, not more. You have to prove that you're going to be more productive, not less productive. Nobody's going to pay $20 a month to write code slower. That's just not how it works. So I think they have a lot of work to go before they're even a benefit to the standard. And like Russell has said, it may save me minutes a day. And for that, that's great. I think he said seconds, but I think it might even save me multiple minutes, like maybe even 10, 15. Sometimes it gets the line correct, and I just go with it, and it's awesome. It doesn't replace. Anyways, let's move on to the next topic. There's a topic that's been burning on my head because I feel like it needs to be talked about. This isn't a news article that I found. It's not one to share with you. It's my own generated piece of news for you guys. And it's something that not only the AI communities have to deal with, but further reaching communities as well. You have things like Stack Overflow. Stack Overflow makes money by you going to their website and getting an answer. That's how they make money, because they have some advertising. They also have some premium stuff that they sell you, whatever. And this is basically all user content. So they have some user content in here that, user made content. Now, this is actually a lot of the internet. This is a lot of the internet. You have Wikipedia, same thing. You have Stack Overflow, same thing. You even have Facebook. It's just a thing with some user-generated content that people like. Stack Overflow is specifically one type of content, whereas each one of those, Facebook is another type of content. Now, in the old days, in 2022, a user would search. The search engine would generate some ads, and that's how they would get paid. And they would link you to this, and that's how Stack Overflow would get paid. The problem I see with AI that no one is talking about is that instead of working in symbiosis with their environment, they are actually killing it. They're going to kill things like Stack Overflow because they don't drive people to there. So search, this was a win-win for both. Search here got to sell ads as well as Stack Overflow. Now, if Google, instead of just showing this, just showed you the answer, here, Stack Overflow would go away. And I think that's what we're going to see with a lot of these different types of sites that provided this with you. There's two options. Either Stack Overflow just goes away. It just dies. Now, what does the AI have to train off of anymore? I think this is a real problem for the AI because it needs training data. And so it needs to find some way to live with these sites. It doesn't want, AIs don't want Stack Overflow to go away. They don't want, if they're thinking about it, they don't want Stack Overflow to go away. It's valuable information that they can make a reasonable attempt at saying, hey, this got upvoted for this problem. It's reasonable to assume that this solves this problem because it got upvoted a lot, which, not saying that's all of them, but that's actually a fairly great training data there. That's been filtered through by a huge community. They don't want this to go away, and they need to find a solution to this. I don't think people are talking about this because Stack Overflow going away will hurt the coding AIs. What is the solution? I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I have a solution. I do have some ideas of things that they could do that I think are terrifying. One, you could not be able to view content unless you log in. The account can be free. You have to log in and prove that you're a human. That's the only way you view data on Stack Overflow. I think that would be terrifying. And I would think that that's a terrible place the web is in. You have to have free account to everything so that they can block AIs from being on there. That's one way we could go. But AIs don't live in harmony with their ecosystem. And the problem is they're worse off without their ecosystem. The coding aids aren't taught on Stack Overflow. It never answers this was asked before closing as duplicate. Russell. Bing search does link to the article, but if it's already summarized it for you and given you what you need, do you actually click on it? I do. A lot of the time. And I think that's better, but I don't think that's a perfect solution. I don't think it's a perfect solution. Because if it's good enough, there's no reason to actually go to that article. Would people be interested in seeing this in a video on my main channel? I've been thinking about this because I think that, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this isn't a problem that needs to be solved. But I actually think that it's bad for both parties. I think it's bad for Stack Overflow, and I think it's bad for the AI as well. And I think just putting the links in there isn't good enough. Because again, if the AI has done its job, yeah. One solution that I had that I think would be somewhat feasible is if you made, how Twitch Turbo allows you to watch Twitch ad-free and support your favorite creator by paying them a little bit. Same with YouTube Premium. YouTube Premium, I get paid on my YouTube by anybody that doesn't watch ads watching my content. And it's really cool. And what they do is basically you pay, with Twitch Turbo, it's like $11 a month in the US, which is a random amount. Just do 10 or 12 or whatever. It doesn't matter. It's $11 a month. Half of that goes to the streamers that you watched, or I don't know the exact split. Some amount of that goes to the streamer the streamers that you watch. So if you watch 5 streamers, you'd get X amount that didn't watch ads. What if AIs did that? So when you searched with Bing, sorry, it's a stupid name. When you search with Bing, and it gives you like how to sand hardwood, and it gives you a link. What if it pays that link? The 2 or 3 links that it gives you. If it does, we'll test this. It types about as slowly as I do. All right. So what if, let's say we're paying $20 a month for this service. What if each of these creators got a kickback? That would be one way. That would be one way. I don't know. I see it as a big problem. Maybe I'm crazy. And I'm not just saying for Stack Overflow. I think it's a big problem for the AIs too. I really hate the word AIs because it's just a statistical analysis. Watch Idra from the chief scientist at OpenAI. He admits that it's just statistical analysis. But I use the word AI because that's what people know. If I say essay, people look at me funny. All right, I'm sorry. I wanted to just run that past you guys. I don't know if you'd like me to do a bigger, we can look at the profits of Stack Overflow after the release of AI and things like that, and some of the struggles that they've gone through. I'm happy to make a video on that if people would think it's interesting. I don't know. Maybe nobody's interested. They're killing themselves. That's my whole point, Russell, is I think it's a problem for them. A lot of people be like, oh, it's a problem for Stack Overflow. Stack Overflow is going to go under. And the whole thing is no, that's actually a legitimate problem for them too. And so yeah, and I just don't see people talking about that. And maybe I just don't read the right places, but I feel like we should be talking about it. Because again, Google and Bing worked together with them because the easier it was to find Stack Overflow, the easier Stack Overflow made money, which then made both Google and Stack Overflow more money. So when Google was winning, Stack Overflow was winning. But that's not the same here. That's not the case. All right, let's talk about Pickle. Let's talk about Pickle. I haven't checked recently. Their recent stats, in the last month. I know a couple months ago I was looking over it. It was still down. But you're right. In the last couple of months, it has, I feel like momentum has changed a bit. Well, let me know what your thoughts are, whether you'd like me to do a deeper dive research into, because that's kind of what I was putting together was the usage stats, and this is why I dug into it. It's going to be a decent amount of work, but if people would be really interested in that type of thing and understanding it better, let me know. Yeah, like I said, I think it's something that people weren't talking about nearly as much as they should be, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I don't know. Let's talk about pickle. So I learned that PKL is actually pronounced pickle. Now, you wouldn't get it from their README. And Apple, one thing I have to say is this README is the worst. This README is the worst. But if you actually go to the pickle website, first, it's pronounced pickle. I have no idea. I was not involved in this naming. I know I'm bad at naming. I try not to make fun of people for their naming. But pickle? Let's talk about it. Now, at first I made fun of pickle because I read this, a configuration as code language with rich validation and tooling. And basically my understanding was that it produces YAML. But this is not entirely true and not entirely accurate. It's actually a full language. It's actually a full language, kind of like Lua, except designed for configuration. And the whole thing is that it's a language designed around configuration as code with bindings for it. They don't have Rust, which is the worst, but they have Java, they have Kotlin, Swift, and Go, which is a pretty good start. Kotlin's awesome. Go is not as awesome as Rust, but it's better than having to do in C++. And yeah, they have VS Code integration, NeoVim integration. So it's interesting because I know that we've talked about how like Lua is actually a really cool configuration language. You can actually use this like you would Lua as a configuration as actual code. Now, you can actually generate JSON. There's actually a ton. You can generate valid JSON, YAML, XML. I forget the number of languages that it can bind to or output to, but you can actually also integrate it into your application. So instead of having it as, you can have people configure your application with a pickle script. Swift is 100% Apple. I bet you Apple has an Android app and some microservices in Go. That's why I'm betting you that they have these three. They have an Android app, they have Go apps, or they have their own apps, and then they have Go apps. Will I write my database to save in pickle? Probably not. Probably not. Especially because I don't know that there's any Rust bindings right now. I think that this is cooler than, and again, I haven't used pickle, so I don't know. I don't know the syntax that it's exactly right, or is the exact thing that you want. But the concept of a configuration language that's actually runnable, like it's an actual language, not just a static. I actually think that that's cool. It's a cool idea. So I just wanted to quickly step into this because I misunderstood it. It's not just another YAML. It's not just another configuration. It is actually a language. And I think that it's a cool concept. I think Lua is still a fantastic choice for that type of thing, though. But if in lieu of Lua, and Lua wasn't designed for configuration. So again, this is just making a purpose-driven type of language. Anyways, I think it's cool. I think it's cool. I'm not sold on it either, Russell. I just know that last week I made fun of it because I didn't understand it fully. This week I understand at least the premise more, and the premise is an interesting premise that we as a community have talked about. And so I thought it was worth coming back to and saying, hey, it actually is a much more interesting premise so that maybe people can get into it. We might have a pickle stream. It's possible. All right, we have some Kubernetes news. Something interesting came to us from TikTok. Yes, something interesting from TikTok has arrived. The year was 2022. The month August. The day the 9th. When effectively, KubeFed was retired. KubeFed is gone. And there was a couple things. But one of the big things that I want to point out, which I didn't know which company it was, but when this happened, they would say that the proposals were originating from a single company. So they didn't like this as the CNCF, that there was a single company really driving the product and not a community, which might be served best with a fork based on their specific needs. And then there was little progress since 2020. So for 2 years, there was very little progress on the roadmap and no update on the roadmap. So people didn't really seem to want to leverage this, or at least not a ton of need. Now, if you guys don't know what KubeFed was, it was basically a way to, let's go back here. If you have multiple Kubernetes clusters, these are clusters, not node. Cluster 1 and cluster 2. And you wanted to run the same stuff on them. Same apps, whatever they may be. The same replica sets, the same whatever. The same deployments. You could run them on both, or you could kind of have a cluster of clusters, and that's kind of what the Federation was doing. That's kind of what the Federation was doing. That the KubeFed was doing. There was a federated deployment, and that federated deployment would deploy on all the clusters, or a selection of clusters, or whatnot. Now, there's ways to do this with Argo CD as well. If you're using Argo CD, there are ways we can talk about doing that. There aren't ways to do it with Flux. One of my problems with Flux is the multi-cluster support. We need clusters of clusters. Anyways, we're not talking about the specific problem. We're just talking about what this is. So it got archived. Kubernetes Cluster Federation, or KubeFed, as many called it. And this was actually KubeFed version 2. Version 1 was archived before this. Now, thanks to TikTok, which I'm assuming TikTok uses multiple Kubernetes clusters, because KubeAdmiral has been released by TikTok. Now, I don't know if TikTok was the singular company, because I know in the deprecation comments they were talking about originating from a single company. I don't know if that was TikTok or not. I tried to look it up and I couldn't find it out easily. I'm sure that I could have, maybe. I don't know. I didn't find it easily. So I don't know if TikTok was the one trying to drive that a lot, but there was a fork developed from Kubernetes Federation v2, and that is KubeAdmiral. So if you guys were leveraging that or still using it, and have a use case, this is out there. And yeah, it's kind of interesting. Anyways, it takes a unique approach on it. I haven't run through all of it completely, but it has a unique federated scheduling algorithm that it leverages. Again, I haven't dug through it completely. One thing that I noted that I wanted to say, though, is it leverages a very specific Kubernetes version, 116 to 124. We're on 129. So 124 is actually kind of old. It's kind of old. As far as I know, they're actively maintaining it. But it's kind of old. Anyways, interesting. Do you guys use this? Do you guys leverage? Do you guys leverage this? What's this Red Hat link? What is this Red Hat link? From 2019? Yeah, I get it. It's KubeFed. That was from 2019. This is Red Hat would be the one. I get what you're saying. Okay, that makes sense. I was wondering what you were saying, but yeah, you're saying that Red Hat was probably the one driving it. That might be true. You know, I almost think that Red Hat being the singular company is probably not as bad as in many other companies, because it's not that they're using it. It's probably from what their customers are wanting, which means Red Hat probably represents more distributed number of companies than other ones. Maybe. I don't know. All right. Rust and AWS are added again. Now, while AWS didn't have much in the cloud news, they have saved JavaScript from itself. Now, they didn't do it single-handedly. They needed a superhero to help them, and that superhero was Rust. AWS Lambda had a problem. AWS Lambda has a problem. Slow startup. Warm starts are a pain. So what's the solution? I'll tell you what the solution is. It starts with an R and ends with an ust. That's right. Rust is the solution. The LLRT was released by AWS as a novel solution to buggy JavaScript. Robust. It is a robust. Thank you. It is a robust, low latency runtime. It was a lightweight JavaScript runtime designed to address the growing demand for fast and efficient serverless applications. LLRT offers up to 10 times faster startup and 2 times overall lower cost compared to other JavaScript runtime running on AWS Lambda. It's built in Rust, utilizes QuickJS as a JavaScript engine, ensuring efficient memory usage and swift startup. So anyways, the LLRT is out and about. You guys can go download it. It's a 1.5 beta. And maybe it's coming to a Lambda near you here soon. It's not their standard. It's just an experimental thing. But I thought that it was interesting enough that they're trying to tackle this. It means that the JavaScript runtime engine as a whole that they've been leveraging is really not working. For them to invest enough time to actually implement this in Rust means that it was a big enough problem that they didn't think that they could leverage. The other cool thing here is that it is an MIT 0. Which is pretty cool. Let's see. Go back to the README. Should I release my stuff as MIT 0? I might. All right. Anyways, thought I'd let you guys know that happened. That happened. It's a thing. Yeah. All right. Just a few little things to wrap up the news. We have a couple fantastic things. As you all know, that Apple's virtual reality headset has come out. You've seen pictures of people wearing them. It is what it is. But what isn't cool is that, as many of you might know, Tesla owners are told not to wear Apple's virtual reality headset while driving. It's a sad place to be when we have to tell people not to wear a virtual reality headset while driving. It is sad because driving is something that kills people. And so yeah. Don't do that. On other news, I'm not on there, but Blue Sky was finally released. The Twitter killer? Yeah, Blue Sky Twitter killer. Has any of you signed up for Blue Sky? I have not. I barely Twitter anyways. So I'm not great at social medias, as many of you know. It is AR. You never heard... Dorsey is making Blue Sky. It's like the big Dorsey spinoff, right? Jack Dorsey, the guy who made Twitter. So let me rephrase that. The guy who made Twitter now brings you Blue Sky. If that helps. All right, NASA is still trying to fix Voyager 1. I'm only bringing this up because I keep telling you guys updates to it because it fascinates me, and thus it must fascinate you. Voyager 1 is still... It's in doubt of whether they're going to be able to rescue it or not. So we talked about the big patch and deploying code millions of miles away. It didn't go well. Who would have guessed this is the worst month of Voyager 1 team programming experience? It didn't go well. It's still running Kate's 116. Yeah, the update to 118. Never jump up. No. So anyways, I'm keeping you guys abreast of it because, I find it interesting. I know it doesn't really have to do with developers, but imagine deploying code that takes 16 minutes at the speed of light to reach the destination. All right, let's talk about the state of software. I know that we've talked about Weaveworks, and we've talked about all of those companies going under, and there are a lot. There's a very interesting thing. There was a change to U.S. tax code that hurt a lot of companies. They're working on getting it repealed as it is, but and I don't have any proof that this was what that this change to the tax code is what caused a lot of layoffs. But it very well could. And it very well could have hurt Weaveworks quite a bit. And basically what it was that developers research and development were no longer able to be written off fully the year that it was charged. Basically, you had to write it off progressively every year. So instead of writing off your salary as an engineer on the year that it was developed, you had to write it off over the next 5 years, which meant for startups, it was very painful. I didn't actually realize this myself until just recently, which meant that while you were still not making money, you actually were making more money and getting taxed on more money than you would originally. This didn't hurt large institutions nearly as much because they can write it off over years and years. And as long as you have the next 6 years to write it off, it comes out to being the same thing in theory. That being said, as there's a lot of doom and gloom, 15 years later, Uber is now profitable. I wanted to point this out, not because I love Uber or anything like that, although Uber does release some really cool engineering articles and blog posts that we do cover occasionally. Uber is now a profitable company, where it was bleeding money a lot, and I know that they have worked very hard to cut costs. Interest rates are also hurting startups. Absolutely, Russell. Let me be clear. I wasn't implying that this was the only thing causing startups to have issues. I was just saying that it was one of the compounding factors. We have interest rates. We have maybe what I'm going to say is an infatuation with AI, which means that a lot of the money that would go towards the startups are going specifically to AIs. And if you're not an AI startup, then you're having a harder time raising another round of money. There's a lot of compounding factors. I just saw that as possibly one of them, where you'll pay a lot more in taxes for a while. So anyways, I apologize. I was not trying to state that it was the only way. I just thought that it could possibly be one, especially early stage startups. Once you're a little bit further in, I think it's easier to deal with. Healthcare. Oh, is it getting a lot? I did not know that. That's good. But yeah, Uber's now profitable, which I mean, I actually thought it was going to die as a $1 trillion company. I thought that was going to just one day close up shop. But Uber has made profitability, which is, I mean, like, it's good for them. Good for them. I know that they did a lot of work. They've had their ups and downs. So yeah. Anyways, it's not all doom and gloom. It's not all doom and gloom. That was big takeaway from that. All right. I know that was kind of all over the place, and I'm not going to. I had an article I wanted to review, but I'm not going to do it because it is getting late, and you guys have been around with me for a while now, and I don't want to drag this on. So we'll cover this another day, but I found an article that I wanted to read with you guys and give you my thoughts. I don't know what it says, but I just want to give you my thoughts because it's an interesting take that I think I disagree with, if what they're saying is what they're saying, which is why developers should put the database first. I think I disagree with this, but it's an interesting take. It's an interesting take. If they're going to argue that you should pick your database before you write your application, like, you know, that's an interesting take. Very interesting take. So I kind of wanted to read over this, thought we could review it together at some point and have a conversation about it. But we'll do that. We'll do that another day. Maybe we'll do a stream tomorrow. Maybe like an hour stream if I have enough stuff to do. The Super Bowl. Oh, real football is happening soon. Good. Real football. How many of you just unsubscribed? How many? Never heard of it. I don't watch. Look, I will watch sports as a community thing. I don't watch sports myself. But like, I think it's fun if you get like a pizza or some stuff and you have friends over and you watch some sports while you're talking and chatting. I think it's a lot of fun. But sports on its own, I don't follow or track or watch. So anyways, but yes, as a community thing, it's fun. I think it's fun. I think you lost 25 of your viewers. Probably. So you're saying I lost one person, Russell? Is that what you're saying? 25% of my viewers gone? We all love soccer. He means 25% of each viewer. All right. Anyways, thank you all for joining me for the news. I think, yeah, I know that we had a ton to go over. There was a bunch of little stuff. None of it was super big, but there was a bunch of little stuff. I hope you guys found it useful. I hope you guys found it helpful. I hope that it helps you in your start to your next week. And I look forward to seeing you guys throughout the week and next weekend. Have yourself a fantastic week, and I'll see you guys later.